Welcome to A Scrap Life, a podcast solely focused on the hustlers, grinders, operators, and business owners who live and breathe the scrap metal industry every day. Here is your host, Brett Eckhart.
Bulls versus Bears, September 2024 edition. I got the guy, the man, Chad Ellerbrock with me once again. We're going to talk about this, what's starting to feel like a 2015 election year scrap market. Is this death by, 1,000 cuts. I'm hope I'm wrong, but I know for a fact that September is going to be a little bit challenging for us guys out there that are processing and trying to sell some scrap. But hopefully Chad will enlighten us with some knowledge. So what's going on, man?
I'm just this is one of the first times ever. We've been doing Bulls versus Bears for a couple years. And I got 8 bull points. I got 2 bear points. And not a single one of these charts matter. And
the market's still fucking going down. All these bull points don't mean shit.
Yeah. So I'm a little defeated in my chart game. Doesn't really matter this month, but we're gonna do this anyhow.
All right, man. I as much as I would love to hear all these bull points, I guess at the end of the day, it's like pissing in the wind. We'll see. Let's see what we got.
So let's just jump in it. The Dow Jones. All right. Looking great. All-time highs. We're up 2.5% month over month. Wonderful, right? Can't complain. Consumer, on another one, consumer confidence. Very similar to what it was pre-COVID, right?
Yes, sir.
You can't complain. Inflation data. Well, if we really would take the false expectation out, we're still at over 10% inflation, but the government says we're getting close to that 4.1% mark, and that they're going to do cuts in late September. 75% chance.
Yeah,
should be.
And usually rate cuts, at least rate cut expectations, rate cuts on the horizon. Definitely a clear signal that they're coming. Usually is bullish for the economy, which then would create some pent up interest, demand potentially on the scrap side. But I'm not feeling it.
Here's another one. Crude steel production rates, all-time high for the whole year. We're at all-time high right now, 80.2%. So you think, wow, things are really, really good, right?
Yes, sir.
Let's go to lead times. Lead times jumped up to 6 weeks from 3.5 earlier this month. Now it's back down to 4.5. But still,
I'd like to know how they. That seems like a crazy measurement. I feel like some guy was drinking when he answered the phone that day when Argus called him. Like, yeah, we're at 8 weeks, and they call back actually, that guy was lying.
Well, but then steel pricing, hot roll. I mean, we're up almost 11% month over month. We were at 654 on the futures. Now we're at 7.25 on the futures.
Yeah.
And most importantly, Brett, we got to understand, we really only care about this chart on the right. We're looking at the hot roll and busheling spread. I mean, these mills got to be able to make money,
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for them not being able to make, 2022 margins where they're, just everybody's walking around buying yachts, I mean, if you can't buy a yacht, then what's the point of owning a steel mill,
Exactly. But so I guess if I know nothing about the scrap world, right? Or let's say I retire, we're retired, and we say utilization rates are at 80%. Lead times, had a blip of 6 weeks. Hot rolls up 10%, 11%. If we just knew that fact, you'd be like, oh man, steel market must be pretty darn good, right?
Yeah.
And so, and furthermore, what if I said, hey, Shanghai steel rebar, that's up 4.5%.
Yeah.
Well, these are good stats, right?
Yeah.
Aluminum's up 8% month over month. I mean, Zorb prices got to be up. Gosh, shredders must be doing good. And shred feed prices are up a couple bucks, just up a few, but that should tell you too, Like
Okay.
everybody must be thinking good about next month. So what's going on here, right? And unfortunately, you know, there's this big black cloud. I made it in black. This is all the mill outages
Do you know what
coming
this
up.
reminds me of? This reminds me of like when you're watching a football game, right? And the quarterback on the offense on one team, they're just fucking lighting it up. They threw for 5 touchdowns, ran for 2, but their defense just can't stop, you know, your brother's sister from running for a 40-yard touchdown, right? So it's like, yeah, hey, we're just killing it on these stats. But by the way, we can't stop anybody, so you're gonna lose no matter what.
Yeah, you're like Colorado last night against North Dakota State, right? Like,
Yeah,
they were doing pretty good on offense, but they sure couldn't stop them. So
yeah,
it's still a close game.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
a tough one.
so this is a big black cloud. This is an August report. August has done a really good job this past month of reporting, and they're showing 1.5 million tons of steel production that's going to be taken out between now and through November.
Wow.
And so, to put in perspective, that's like what Nucor buys in a month. So let's just say in the next 90 days, Nucor is basically not buying for a month. That's a big black cloud.
And you think, I mean, obviously that's the big driver for what we're going to see from a demand perspective, because obviously supply and obviously the old school supply versus demand, but the demand side with all these outages and all these tons being taken out is it a ploy to drive prices down in a potentially up market and get some maintenance done and just kind of get ready for what they feel could be a pop towards the end of the year, so that they want their maintenance done, they want everything right? Because if they start lowering rates, maybe that turns the housing market on a little bit, so you're going to see more rebar move. Maybe it turns on, the back some commercial stuff? Or do you think it's just like, let's just take these mills down, they've done all right for the year, and just get some maintenance, some required maintenance that we've maybe been deferring? Like, what's your opinion on that?
So I'm gonna read a quote. The first time I'm ever gonna read a quote on the Bulls versus Bears. So this is gonna be a good one. All right. So this is from Steel Dude on X or Twitter. So Steel Dude on X, this has got to be golden information.
Yeah, because
you all should
name Steel Dude. Yeah.
You all should really check him out though. He is pretty good. I think he's a buyer in Turkey. And so here's what he says: I'll end quote, these dudes, he's referring to the USA scrap dudes, are still comfortable compared to their colleagues from EU. But the comfort zone has narrowed down as of last week. The situation is pretty much like last year in the US. Mills are preparing to go under scheduled maintenance and reduced output in order to prevent prices from declining any further. In layman's terms, it means less appetite for scrap, and the amount of procured volume by electric arcs mills will be shrinking in the next 4 to 6 weeks, obviously.
Yeah.
Now the question is, how will the scrap dudes handle this situation? They are the experts and are really good at controlling the market, but cutting collection is usually how it's done, so that supply is limiting pricing somewhat stable. Regardless, the decline seems inevitable. So go ahead. What I take away from that is he's saying is just like 22, right? We just literally like in 2022, the scrap market went down, and all summer we're like, this is the bottom. And then it would go down another 20. This is the bottom. Then it would go down another 20. Then we had Argus and other publications posting that if you have $4 gasoline and diesel, and a peddler brings in 2 tons of scrap, like they're basically breaking even. It's impossible for pricing to go down. And then pricing went down.
And then it went down.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now here we are, we've had 3 months of sideways kind of little moves here. And now we're probably going to go down. And this has got to be the bottom, right? And on the other side, what's causing Turkey to go down, right? If we bounce over to, let me pull that chart here. If we look at the 80-20 Turkey chart, right? This is really another, you got the big black outage cloud, and then you got export just getting crushed. And well, Turkey's down from 392 to 370. So it's like $22. It was down as low as 365. So this isn't good. So you got a lot of export tons not being going off the coast. You got limited demand in the States. It's not a good picture. And okay, so why is all that? And it's really focuses on one country. And this is where I think like why the charts don't matter this month is because it's the Chinese fear of steel production, right?
Yeah.
Like when iron ore is in the 90s, that's not a good sign. And so again, from the steel dudes, he says China has begun this week with some positivity. Well, because it basically says after the last 4 to 7 prices on a lot of steel products are at 4 to 7 year lows. So some would say, hey, we're probably pretty close to the bottom, but he further on says is they're crushing. I mean, the Chinese billets and hot roll being dumped all over the world. It's crushing countries like India, Turkey, Taiwan, Vietnam, Iran, Saudi Arabia, U.S., and the European nations. Basically saying the whole steel market's pretty messed up right now. And I think that's a pretty good summary of what's going on.
Back to what you're saying, throw all the charts out the window. But I think if you've got $90, and just for reference, like $90 iron ore is pretty cheap. Like we can agree on that.
Yeah.
I mean, typical, what's a decent price for iron ore? Like,
well, it's increased just like the price of steel with inflation, right? But earlier, like January this year, we're at over 140.
So if you have, say, $120 iron ore, then your scrap pricing, because on the EAF side and where your pricing will be, should be significantly better today, right? And you probably, I mean, honestly, if you could probably add $50 to it all day, if you had $120 iron ore or maybe more, depends on what's going on. But if iron ore is in the 90s, and the Chinese are just pumping steel out. I mean, that's their welfare program. Let's be really honest with ourselves. Like they don't give people money, they give people jobs, and they say we're going to make steel come hell or high water, and we're going to ship it all over the country, all over the world, and that's how you're going to get paid because we're going to try and keep shit moving, right? That has a big effect on your local steel mills, right? Whether you're an EU steel mill or you're a Turkish steel mill or a Indian steel mill or a US steel mill. I mean, you can as much as you hear about the Buy America made in the USA, there's still a lot of products in the US, in America, that are made from Chinese steel production. So that's the concern. That's the worry. That's where, trade and tariffs and, not allowing that, ability. Yeah. Could it cause, you can make the argument, is there an inflation cost to that or what, I mean, yeah, but is there also the ability to protect your domestic, markets? And not just saying from a US standpoint, but from a EU standpoint, from an Indian standpoint, like, is there a motivation there to protect your steel mill, your infrastructure, your jobs, your local jobs, and not allow that, and I think that's one of the platforms that, you can count on, Trump running on, right? I mean, he definitely has discussed that, and that's something that you guys as voters should pay attention to. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm telling you who I'm going to vote for, but I'm not telling you who you should vote for. But it's something that's worth paying attention to.
Steel wall would increase steel production.
What's that?
A steel wall would increase steel production.
It would increase. It would increase. I was just reading an article this morning, and not to get into it, it said that 150 billion was spent on illegal immigrants, and all Trump wanted was 5 billion to build a wall. Not that solves the riddle all the way, but at least it. Yeah. Long story short, and we make more steel. So, I guess all I'm saying is the charts are what they are. The stats, you can throw for 6 touchdowns, but if you can't stop anybody, and in our situation, in other countries' situation, the fucking floodgates are opened up, and they're letting cheap steel come in. Like you can, the stats are good, but if your defense ain't stopping anybody, then you're still gonna lose. At the end of the day, you're gonna lose.
Well, even our own tariffs, we have tariffs to prevent some steel coming our way, but when it's just completely saturating, all the countries I mentioned, Turkey, Taiwan, Vietnam, India. Like it doesn't matter. It's
It brings it brings everybody down, right? Like the old saying, a rising tide, floats all ships.
yeah.
I mean, the opposite is very true. It can bring them, a good storm can bring a lot of boats down.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway, from today and from this Bulls versus Bears is everything's pointing potentially where it could be in the right direction, but there's some extenuating circumstances that are really, putting the crunch on it. And I think a, a lot of that is the steel production being taken out of, as far as you can call it mill utilization rate at 80%, but if you're buying that many less tons and you're processing that many tons, it's like, what is that utilization rate truly? Because is that number figured in to the utilization rate? Or is it not? Do you know the answer to that, Chad?
The utilization rate chart I shared, that was just U.S. utilization rate.
But what I'm saying though is, do they calculate in if you take, let's say, Nucor Plymouth, for example, right? They're gonna take one of their furnaces down because they're gonna replace it. They did this, I don't know, 6 8 months ago, replaced one, and they took it down. It took them a little bit longer to get it back going. And so long story short, that takes away 40 50% of your buy for the month. Do they calculate that 40 50% as part of your mill utilization, or off just one furnace or two? Like, how are they calculating that number?
Well, in theory, like when that week comes, when they are down for those 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you should see that. Like the utilization report I get is every week by the AIST, right? Saying that's how much steel production was this week. So these future cuts, right? Well, I mean, that should literally be in mid 70s, even low 70s as we go through all these
If
production.
all those mills were buying and in the market, that utilization rate would actually be significantly lower. So it looks good on paper at 80, but it's because so many mills are out of for maintenance outages or whatever. So it can keep the utilization rate high because there's only so many running.
No, it's like stock prices, right? Like a stock isn't worth what it's worth today on its today's PE and A ratio. It's worth what is it speculated to be, right? The utilization today is 80%, right? But the market's probably going to go down is because we know in the next 30, 60 days, there's going to be that utilization rate should fall. It should be 72, 73. Like if Nucor Plymouth takes half their furnace out, well, that utilization is going to go down lower, right? Because
because they're only going to be at 50% utilization.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be at 100% utilization because they have one down. Okay. Yeah. Well, so then, I mean, the utilization rate, I guess, it's really more, it's the pricing obviously is on anticipated outages, anticipated demand versus say what's actually being done today. What's actually being processed today.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I learn something new every day. That's why we do them. If I knew everything, I wouldn't need to do this phone call with you. I'd just sit back and trade.
Well, and I think they're higher because I think order books they're trying to get ahead of, like if you're ordering steel and your new core Plymouth's gonna be out for 2 weeks, you might say, okay, well, I'll push some of my orders ahead, right? That way I'm still getting steel deliveries even when you're down. And I think that's what's happening.
And if you look at those charts and let's say we do get a rate, decrease in September, maybe one in November, maybe, right? A second one, depending on how hard they go in September. Maybe one more by the end of the year. I don't know. We'll see. Then there is a potential for a bounce. I really believe that. But if it's lower than anticipated, if the economy struggles or whatever, then I do feel, and we said this last month, I was like, hey, if you got tons, it might be a good opportunity to make that shit go away. And I'm not no Nostradamus. I just, I could feel like it was coming. But I do feel like if you've got tons, if you've got the ability to move them, it's probably not the worst thing going into even October. Now, who knows? Usually December, January can bring a little bit of love to the scrap market, historically, but all bets are off in an election year, and who knows like how this thing ends up. But I feel like I've seen this movie before, like I said, in 2015, an election year, and you were just hoping that the pain was going to subside, and it just kept coming. So I'm not telling you what to do, But I'm saying it never hurts to have a little bit of dry powder in the bank if you want to move some scrap. So,
Well, in 2022, the scrap market went sideways in November. It went up in December. It went down all the way up till then. Okay.
yeah.
And turkey pricing didn't bottom out until 330. Today we're around 370. Okay. So keep that in mind. And also our steel dude did say this. He said, I see there's no solid reason for the US to expect a major upward correction. You might ask me what I mean by a major upward correction. For me, that's around $60 a ton from current levels. So he goes, to me, this is the real amount we need to see real market positivity. So the trend is your friend, and we continue to.
The trend is a shitty, slippery slope right now. You know what? Like, it's like those slip and slides. Like when you're in the summer and you play them out in the grass and you put some water on and you slide down it. This one's just covered in shit, but it's still slippery. So I'm about to be sliding down it. We'll see if it changes. I hope it does, but I'm not gonna hold my breath.
Well, I feel like we nailed it. We went through the charts quickly because just an interesting month. But
Yeah.
But what a great Bulls versus Bears, and what a great data points back and forth here.
I appreciate you, man. As always, way to give us some insight. And like I said, the goal here is always just to give you something to think about. I mean, do what you want to do. It's your scrap. You bought it. You processed it. You own it. It's yours. Do it how you want to, but at least you got some information to chew on over the weekend. So enjoy. And if there's ever any questions for Chad, you can check him out on LinkedIn. He posted the these points up there on his LinkedIn profile as well. So you can always refer back to those. We'll put them out in the Recycle Media newsletter, and just we try to just get it out there. So I mean, maybe you don't see Chad's profile, maybe you don't see the newsletter, whatever it is. We try and put it in enough places that hopefully people can see it or listen to it or whatever. So any feedback, please give us a shout. Take care and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Brett.
All right, sir.